Welcome back to WebEnc Wednesday, and in today's session we're going to be talking about how to properly plan and design a website. So the idea is not to jump straight into the website build in WordPress, for example, and figure things out on the fly as you go along. I've just found personally, I've spoken to other people as well, and it generally ends up in a lot of frustration and going backwards and forwards, whereas if you've got a proper plan, by the time you get into building the website, then it's literally just going according to the blueprint, and the result is generally a lot better, and it's a lot more effective and takes a lot less time to build. So what I just wanted to go through today, based on an example project, building a graphic design portfolio website, and the design workflow going as follows. So the first thing you want to do is just decide what exactly the content is that you're going to be including in your website. So the first thing is to list the content sections, and along with that, actually sketching out a website structure. So your homepage, about us, portfolio, etc., etc. Once you've got the content down, then going out and sketching a wireframe. A wireframe is basically a blueprint layout of the page. You don't actually put the content and the images and elements in there. It's filled with placeholders. And then the next thing you're going to be doing once the wireframe is done is to define a style guide. By the time you get to the point of actually building a website, you should already have a style guide, a logo, your brand colors, your payoff line, your fonts, etc., which you're going to be implementing into the design. The next thing that you have is building your design layout. Generally we use Photoshop as a tool for this, but I know there are other tools like GIMP and Illustrator, and some people even use InDesign for this process. So starting off with listing your content sections. We're dealing here with a freelance graphic designer, not an agency. So typical sections, for example, would be an About Me page, just talking generally about what the designer does and where I come from, styles, etc., etc. And then the next thing would be the services. So you're basically showing what services you provide. This designer, for example, specializes in corporate identity, print design, and website design. Then we've got another page for the portfolio, and obviously a contact us page and a home page. And you can see up here I've done a little website structure, starting at the top with the main home page. Then underneath that, on the same level, about services, portfolio, and contact. And then underneath services is a page for each of the separate services. By the way, incidentally, structuring the website properly and in a logical order is imperative for search engine optimization. And then next up is the wireframe layout of your homepage. We're just going to do the homepage now in this session, but you can repeat this for the other pages as well. On the top, as you can see, I've represented images with either a circle or a square with the cross inside it. And these are the main navigation tabs. For each section there's a header, so about, services, and portfolio. I've represented an image over here, and then the content to the right. And then within the services page there's a little blurb, very short excerpt of each service, and then there's a link to an individual service page, and then little circle images. You can use icons, they are pretty cool as well. And then underneath that directly is a portfolio, and our portfolio is represented by a grid of images and some text, and then the option of either clicking on it and a pop-up coming up showing the work, or some websites have a link directly to a separate page or a post for each item in the portfolio, when you can describe and talk a bit more about the project, the challenges, the brief, and the outcome, and better images on the project. And then finally we come to the actual design side of things. I've incorporated these into one element because we're not, this isn't a tutorial about actual design, but more about the structure and planning. So the next item would be to define your style guide. A style guide, like I said before, is something that should be defined already, and you can just pull with that. If you don't really have a style guide, then you can do it from scratch. Basically what you want to do here is define things like colors, color scheme, main colors, accent colors, and then the next one is fonts. You probably want to have a font that's for headings, and then you're going to have a font for body text. The fonts for headings can be a bit more fancy and elaborate, but you want to keep the body font much more legible. And generally a Google font is pretty good because it doesn't increase the load time of the page by too much. Droid Serif and Open Sans are very good options for that. Then you probably want to keep a folder with stock images. These can be images that you've bought online or some images that you've taken yourself. And then also don't forget graphic elements. Anything besides, well, including your logo, but besides your logo, including icons and other caricatures or any other thing you want to have that's an illustration that you want to display on your site. Right, once you've got all that together, then you're basically down to designing your layout. This is when you open up, I use Photoshop, so open up your Photoshop and start with your layout. As I said, it's not a design tutorial, so that's where I'm going to stop. But this pretty much gives you an overview of the workflow and steps that you should generally follow in order to have a well-designed, effective website. Thank you again, and I'll see you next week.